Good morning, everyone. I am throwing that in the chat for our INSAW resources out there. I did mention in there, I know Alex likes to have you all put your name and college in the chat. So if you would like to do that, we'll also share that registration or the attendance list as well. So I'll introduce myself and Jennifer can introduce herself. And then we're going to kind of tag team this presentation because there's a lot of fun discussion that happens around employer engagement. So good morning. My name is Amy Julian. I'm the director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. And Jennifer, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Scary, and I am the Dean for Continuing Education and Business Services at Illinois Valley Community College.
So we are coming to you live today to talk about employer engagement for your non-credit learning community. If you have questions as we go through, raise your hand. We'll be kind of discussing back and forth, but also have a lot of content. I'm going to say a lot, 39 slides, a lot of content for you today. So if we want to move into the next slide there, we'll kind of kick off this session. And when we talk about why employer or businesses are important to colleges and our college programs, I just like to start with this quote: "Neither employers nor educators can accomplish their goals in the labor market alone. Partnership allows both sides to leverage their combined knowledge of labor markets, skills, pedagogy, and students." And yes, I know that's from 2010, but I also think it's still pretty applicable. And so today we're going to talk about, why we engage business, how we engage business. And between Jennifer and I, we should have some great content for you. Brittany's going to chime in as well. And if there's others who want to join, please let us know. So if we move to the next slide, we're going to talk about why we engage business. Employers need colleges and colleges need employers. Employers need colleges for workforce with the right skills and credentials. Colleges need employers to help them get the skills and competencies right. Employers need training providers and communities to support students in learning essentials, and colleges need employers to employ and continue the support of graduates. Strong engagement leads to trust, referrals, and renewals. And one of the things that I want to stress as we go through here is sometimes when we're talking with colleges, there is that notion that the business does not need you as much as you need them. And that's not true. I want you to think about when you're engaging with business that you bring a lot to the table, the services you bring to the table. We're going to talk about that a little bit as we move through this presentation. So they need you as much as you need them. And sometimes it's kind of that, oh, well, business needs us, or we need business so bad to do these projects, because we talk about how we engage with business over and over again. However, they're also talking about how they engage with you. I've been to chamber meetings. I've been to business meetings with businesses. They need the colleges. They need our program. So don't think you're not bringing anything to the table when you are engaging with business, because you are bringing a whole lot of what they need. If we move to the next slide, we want to kind of get to know your audience. What does your audience need? So your students need easily understood on-ramps. And when you talk to students about internships, externships, job opportunities, all those things, they need those on-ramp, clear line opportunities, exit strategies, and a plan. Your faculty, when you talk to faculty about this, they need to understand how workforce strategies connect their field. And sometimes that's a really easy conversation. I'm a welding instructor. Welding connects to welders being employed as welders. Yay. Sometimes it's a little bit more challenging. So we want to make those connections for faculty. And then employers need strategies directly connected to hiring needs, how apprenticeships fit in if we're using apprenticeships, and their connections to the community. A lot of businesses really want to emphasize and highlight that connection to the community. So we want to, build on that, highlight that for them as well. Jennifer, is there anything you want to add?
No, well, I'll just add to that. We are a community college, and serving our business community is so tightly tied to our mission. And I think sometimes the misconception is employers, the community looks to the community college for what they traditionally do, right? And that is to train students and to earn certificates and degrees. And I think one reason this webinar today is so important is that sometimes we're the college's best kept secret. And, though we lie maybe within an institution that doesn't necessarily look like a business training center or someone that can directly help business and industry, we can. And that's why learning how to effectively engage with, employers is more important than, if we just had a brick or mortar building that people could drive by and see. I often say, like I said, we're the college's best kept secret.
And that actually perfectly aligns with our next slide, talking about the benefits to employers. Is the employees have information and skills needed to make informed long job and long-term career choices, reduce turnover, excellent retention, greater productivity, and lower cost. A lot of times employers will come to the college and say, I want you to fix this problem for me. I want you to address this challenge. Last year when we were at the SAW conference, the keynote talked about that quite a bit, how he has worked with businesses and made that connection. And the benefit to employers is we, as community colleges, that collective we, are able to really help upskill their incumbent workers. We're able to reduce turnover. We're able to fill those niches, and we're able to be agile, flexible, accommodating, all of those things that business really needs us to be. If we go on to the next slide, this really is some tips for employer participation. It's sometimes tough to get employers to participate. Anybody experience that from time to time? I'm seeing some smiles and I'm seeing some nodding. So yeah, we've all experienced that. We want you to know about your work-based learning strategies and concepts and be persistent. It's okay to follow up. It's okay to say, hey, I want to, bring this back to the top of your inbox. It's okay to come back to something. One of the things that's really important in any kind of outreach or communication or cold calling is that idea of we don't know how busy they are, and we want to acknowledge that they do have a lot of things on their plate. So don't be afraid to be persistent would be my little undertake there. Identify the talent pain points. Listen to your employer. Do some research. Find out what those employers are struggling with and how you can help. If you have somebody new in your backyard or in your area and they have some opportunities, listen to them. Listen to see what's going on, or help them identify strategies for success, which often include that involvement of the community college. Use work-based learning examples from other business and industry. People like to hear from people who are like them. So a business talking to a business about how great a service you provided for them is really your best marketing tool. Tight labor market, we know that. Everybody knows that right now. Sell that idea of a grow your own pipeline for businesses. We can help you as the college. We can help you grow your own. We can help you cultivate your employees to grow within their current areas and become that leadership role that you're looking for. And we can also help you find, identify, and create industry intermediaries to assist employers. So what are you looking for and how can we help you navigate that lovely system? Jennifer, Brittany, anything you want to add to that?
I think you have it covered.
Okay. We'll move along to what compels employers to participate with a college. And really, we're looking at that idea of employers need to know that training will not be a loss leader. So they're not going to take away from productivity by engaging with the program. Second part is employers need assurance that people will be productive from the start. And that's one of the things that colleges often offer is we can talk about what the expectations are. I know many of you are familiar with the Essential Employability Skills Framework that we did quite a while ago, and we're actually in the process of updating that. And one of the things is that there's different parameters for different areas. So on time means different things to different industries, and we want to work with the employers to figure out what they need to make sure their people are productive from the start. Employers need to know that individuals will continue to receive support throughout their training. So if you're looking at somebody and placing somebody in a work-based learning activity through non-credit, that is something that they'll still have those college supports. They're still going to have somebody to go back and ask and have that, that support level that a lot of people don't realize is available to students who are hired out of community colleges.
And to add, Amy, I think one of the worst things we can do in the contract training field is to go and deliver a training program and then walk away.
Yeah.
Whether it's a 1-day session or a 8-week, 8 sessions. Employers need that reinforcement. We need to help employers understand that for training to truly be implemented within an organization, that they need to have a stake in the game as well, and work with those individuals, work with their employees to make sure that the skills learned in the classroom are being transferred into the job. And we can help employers establish that accountability with their employees. So, my words of wisdom would be, you're not done once the training program ends. you need to keep in contact with with those employers, so we can guarantee that skill knowledge is transferred and being incorporated on the job.
And that's also a great opportunity for maybe additional training. Maybe there's something that they didn't see that they needed as they move through. If we want to go to the next slide, what do employers want? This is kind of universal. They want skilled talent. They want solutions that make sense. They want a diverse workforce. They want to understand what this magical little thing that apprenticeships is. They want mutual benefits and partnerships. They want flexible and nimble training offerings. And that's that idea of maybe it's stackable. Maybe, hey, you come in for 8 weeks, we're going to give you this, and then we're going to identify another need and address those needs. Flexible, nimble. That's what community colleges are known for. And that's really where our non-credit programs shine. They want support. They want to hire for attitude, train for skill. And what's funny is I actually used that little quote the other day when talking about working within growing our team. Like, we have a team dynamic that we don't want to disrupt. And we're a little 9-woman man team. And so we have a little team dynamic that we don't want to disrupt. Think about that in a larger sense of a bigger company. They do as well. Also, don't forget your local, your homegrown mom and pop shops around your community, because those are also great opportunities to really use your training skills and your training curriculum.
I think a good way to summarize this chart too is we want to make it easy for employers to say yes to us. So we want to do everything we can to be flexible and nimble, to deliver a product, that works without a lot of, steps. And I think sometimes, obviously, employers, and we experience this every day, we come from within a bigger institution, and there are certain ways we're supposed to collect data and things we're supposed to do. I really encourage you to challenge your college to make it to be employer friendly, and to, because really our competitors have an easier time, perhaps of being employer friendly because they're outside of a larger institution. So, make it easy for employers to say yes.
Our next slide might just be saying it in a different way, but we're going to say, we're kicking home our point or hitting home our point. Engage other employers. Other employers are your best advocates. We've talked about that a little bit. Leadership matters. Bring in your college presidents, your mayors, your council commissioners, those who have worked with your college programs, and let them know about how great of a program you have. Generate buzz, good stories, op-ed pieces, all of those things do help share the great work you are doing. Open houses and business events, know what you're talking about. When you engage with those businesses, have your elevator speech ready on what you're going to be able to offer them. Don't just go in cold and saying, oh, I know we can help, but you're not really sure how. Know who's coming to your events. Know how you can engage with them. Do your research. Share national examples or be the leader within those national examples. And Illinois has a lot of fantastic programs that we are leading that area. And then outreach and engagement with your Chamber of Commerce. If you don't go to those meetings, I encourage you to. I know everybody's calendars are hugely packed and there is not an extra minute in the day, but find out when your local chamber meets and find out what committees they're doing and go, because I promise you, if you assume they know about you, you're wrong. They don't. They sort of kind of do. They have some preconceived notions, but they don't know all the wonderful things that you can do for them. And showing up and being in the room is how you're going to be able to tell them about the great things you can do.
And I could just add some practical examples about some things we're doing using the Strategy at Work funds at Illinois Valley Community College. With that money, this launching in January, we are doing a marketing campaign. And really that consists of several branches or several methods of marketing. One of those, which is our training specialist, Jennifer Sowers, is running the circuit and is the guest speaker at several Rotaries. So throughout IVCC, we have probably 4 or 5 administrators who are involved in different Rotary clubs. And so we've been able to get her on the docket to present at those meetings. In addition to that, we've started a marketing campaign with our local radio station. I know some of you may think, radio is passé, but we've determined here that still a lot of business owners listen to certain stations, throughout the day, or they're on in their office. So we're doing some radio advertising, and as part of that package, Jennifer was invited in to do a 3-series radio show, where she's being interviewed and talking about our services. In addition, another project we're doing, which we're incorporating the grant money with, is we're offering a small business accelerator program starting in February. And to successfully launch that program, we've partnered with the chambers to help drum up business. So we have 6 chambers, I believe, in our district. I've seen e-blasts, I think, from 4 or 5 of them already. I guess the message is you don't have to do it alone. Reach out to your partners, people who have connection to employers, use your presidents. I remember listening to a presentation, it's probably been 25 years ago. And the message was, if you're not talking to your president on a relatively consistent basis, you're really missing the boat, because presidents tend to surround themselves, with other presidents or with business owners, and they're a great resource for generating leads. So definitely use your resource.
Excellent examples. Thank you. All right, we'll move to the next slide, which is how do we engage businesses? We're going to do a little deeper dive. If you go to the next slide, we're going to look at how we're going to focus in. There are common obstacles with employer engagement. There are steps for employer engagement, and we're going to talk about selling your program to employers, speaking the language of business, and then we're going to have some time for Q&A. You go to that next slide, we're going to jump into some common obstacles, and I'm going to run through this, and then we'll kind of go into these each distinctly. The common obstacles include: which company should you start with? Where do you start? Who should speak with? Who should you speak with? When should you approach them? How do I help them overcome their fears of working with youth, with colleges? That's a typo on my part, so I apologize for that, with colleges. But how do we help them overcome any fears or concerns they have about working with your program? Next slide there is really looking at steps for engaging business. One, you're going to develop a tailored list of employers who are your most responsive to intervention. And if you know me, you know I use that term quite a bit. I like to work with people who want to be worked with. So what are the people who are most responsive to intervention? They're going to get on board and be open to the things that you can do to help them. Reach out to businesses, email, call. Yes, the phone is still a tool. We can talk with people. We do right. I love that Jennifer said people are using radio. Yes, people do listen to the radio. They have their time in their cars, but they also still do answer phones, and most offices still do have a desk phone. Identify businesses' needs. You are a solution to their problems. So how do you frame your pitch as being a solution? And then share how you can address their problem. Pitch your services. This is what we can do for you. I see you have this issue. How can we solve that issue? Follow up and confirm what has been agreed upon, and then build relationships. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Jennifer's going to talk about the engagement cycle.
Sure. So
all of those pretty deep, but I wanted to just kind of surface line those first.
Right. So this is really just a graphic of much of what Amy said. And this isn't the engagement life cycle commonly used in contract training. And I think that the general theme throughout all of this is communication and involvement. You want to be seen. You don't necessarily want to, hide behind email. I'm still a firm believer of relationships are really built face to face. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we don't have as much face to face action as we used to, because now we can. Obviously we see each other face to face via Zoom, but I still think there's something to meeting in person. And so I still encourage going to the company, inviting them to the college to see where you are in the resources you can offer. We'll get into the different parts of this life cycle, but one thing, I really want to point out is that co-design. And that is in whatever you're designing or creating for an employer, whether it's a training program or you decide it's consulting or other. Really make them feel involved, because they know their business best. They often can help you identify the problem and are just needing a solution. So once again, going in with an open mind to determine, to uncover that underlying problem and to discuss that problem, and then co-design a solution. And then I'll just jump to that renewal phase. If they're renewing with you, then you can say, okay, we're we've been successful. We've established a relationship. They want to come back. And so if you go through each of the 6 steps and complete the cycle, then you can say, okay, we're engaged. We have a relationship. And as we've heard so many times, it's so much easier to keep a customer than find a new one. So Amy, you can go ahead and advance.
Okay, let's jump into jumping into each of these a little bit more in depth. So first thing is we're going to create a list of business. We're going to give you some prompts as you're thinking about this. So if you go to that next slide, know your targets. Like, what do you want your program to do? What is your ask? What is their need? What is the target population? What's your program model? If you have a training program model, let's get that in order. And then moving to that next slide, be targeted in your business list. Create a list of 5 to 10 companies that you're, target by researching. Growing sectors, maybe that's what you're looking at. High turnover industries, maybe they're new. When Rivian came into the Bloomington Normal area, that should have been on top of everybody's list, like at least in the Central Illinois area, because it's a huge manufacturing area. Who's coming in? Who's building? Who's growing at that point? And then move to that next slide. Identify those growing sectors. So looking at, there's a ton of data out there, and I love using data. I'm not a data nerd per se. I like the application of data. So I'm going to sell myself in that frame, just so I'm, not trying to sell you false goods. But the Bureau of Labor and Statistics has they have 10-year projections. There is the Illinois Department of Employment and Security that has some great projections. Look at your local chamber of commerce. They usually, or the ones that I've worked with, there's only about 4 that I've worked with, so I will say that's not a majority of the state. But all 4 of those look at projections from year to year. And some do a 5-year plan, some do a 3-year plan, some do a 2-year plan. And they're looking at where are those growth areas within their area. So if it's McLean County Chamber of Commerce, they're looking at what's going to grow in the next 2 to 5 years. If it's Peoria County, they're looking at those things. If it's McDonough or DeWitt, they're looking at different things. Sometimes there's a thread that goes through all, not always. So look at what your local chambers of commerce are looking at. Partner with those crazy workforce people. You heard of them, those LWIAs? I'm being funny. They are great people to partner with, but they have access to that data as well. So look at your LWIAs and what are their top areas. And for their grants, most of the time, they have to designate what programs and training they're going to be looking at. So what are those priority areas? Information sources, LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, personal and professional networks, company websites, press releases, news. There's all kinds of resources when you look at what are your growth sectors in your area.
And I know you're all thinking, sure, we'd love to do this, but how do we fit this in to everything else we're doing, right? Because we understand in contract training in community colleges, we're often a 1 or 2 man show. So I encourage you to be deliberate and take the time to do these things. Here we're going through a very similar process to this right now, and we're trying to build, a distribution list for our business and industry class schedule. Because once the list is built, then you have it, you can work off of it for a couple of years, but it's definitely something, that takes time, but you have to be deliberate in carving out time to do it, because then it sort of sets the stage for companies to, contact or target, in the next year.
So these are just some other points, and we'll run through these as well. Like high turnover industries, manufacturing, government, agriculture. Those are where you're going to see retirement booms, and that's came out of the Department of Labor and Statistics recently. Areas where turnover or advancement create openings is really where you have a niche population. And then moving to look at the next companies. What are you going to be looking for when you're wanting to build a program or support this company? Do they have accessibility? Are they flexible? Do they have entry-level positions? Are there opportunities for mentorships? Because you can build out mentorship programs within those industries. And that can be some of your training that you do for them as being the initiator or the support for the mentee-mentor relationship. Are they civic-minded? Socially responsible? Safety should always be a priority, I think, in any industry, but I put it on there anyway. And then, again, don't forget you're locally owned. I think a lot of times when we talk about business, we talk about, Caterpillar and John Deere and Microsoft, but we don't think about the locally owned businesses, and those are really the backbone of the state of Illinois. And so look at those as well. This next slide is just something, and I sourced it there. I stole this. It's a targeted approach to apprenticeship business engagement. And I understand that not everybody's talking about apprenticeships, but it is a really nice diagram. So it looks at the challenges. What are the challenges? Skilled gaps in hiring, development of existing talent, and attracting and retaining talent, retiring workforce, and advancing technology. There's a description, there's an indicator, and that's a really just great way to look at how you can build those great partners and what are those things to look for. Businesses need to hire and have plenty of applicants, but applications don't have the skills required to do the job. Indicator, job postings stay open for a long time. So how do you support that, help them with that, fill that need, address that pain point, or help them through that? So before we move on to step 2 of create a list of businesses, any questions there? All right, we'll keep plugging along. Step 2 is reach out to businesses. And this we've already talked a little bit about, so I'm going to kind of skim through these as well. Identify who the company has knowledge of hiring and operations. Who do you need to talk to? Is that HR? Is that the boss? Is that the manager? Who in the company is the person who has the knowledge about how people are hired or what their needs are? Request an interview. We'd like to speak with you about how we can support your recruitment and retention goals. We'd like to speak with you about, this training that we feel you need, or we've identified that we've heard you talk at these chamber meetings that you have this pain point issue. This is how we can help. But you have to reach out and contact them. Jennifer, anything I'm missing there?
No, I think the important part here, though, is even if you have, we talk about this here sometimes as well. Oftentimes, perhaps we're in contact with the human resource manager because they sent someone to an open enrollment, Excel class, but we're wondering who else, perhaps we could talk to there to maybe, undercover issues, with supervisory leadership training, or maybe something on the manufacturing plant floor. I guess the point is ask, work with the person to see who else you should be talking to. Say to them, thanks for sending someone, to the Excel class. Do you know we offer contract training where we can be a solution to any of your business issues? Is there anyone else you would suggest I talk to within your company? So use the resources you have, to help get your foot in the door.
And Jennifer, I think, just kind of summarized our step 3. We're going to skip the next slide and go to the next one, because the interview, she just talked about all that. What are those things? What are the areas that you're looking for? And if we'll go on to the pain points, that's something that these are areas where we often see coming out of the interview, there are issues. So you make the call, you set up the interview, you go in, all the things that Jennifer just said about, how we can help. And then these are potential pain points. Do they have recruitment issues? Do they have persistent vacancies? Do they have low employee retention rates? Do they have a high training cost? And if they do, that's something the college can help with. The college can help with all of these areas. All right. Step 4, share how you can address their problem. So your top reasons for businesses to engage in employment is, actually, I'm going to skip to the next one on this slide because that's just kind of a weird slide. So anyway, let's go back to I got ahead of myself. So go back to 28, sorry, Brittany. So top reasons that they do, and this is from United Way Northeastern study in Florida. They engage because of diversity, ability to top future labor markets, unfair hiring advantages, cost-effective employees, and temporary work opportunities. The reasons they do not engage, and you can take the word youth out altogether there, is there's a disconnect between the opportunity and the applicants. There's finances. They think it's going to cost too much to work with you. There's time. No one has time for anything. But here's the thing. They don't have time to deal with hiring new people. If they don't have time to upskill their current people, they sure are not going to have time to go through hiring and upskilling someone brand new. Transportation is a continual barrier, getting their employees to your facility. So make that option. Hey, we'll come to you. We're going to come and do the training at your facility if you want us to do those trainings for you. And then limitation of public resources. And I don't always think that they understand exactly what those words mean, because we're here to help them as a public resource. And then this is really where we as non-credit shine, addressing problems through training and consulting. So offer tailored solutions. Training is not the only solution. Include the employer in the program design, invite them to help shape the curriculum. And I'm going to let Jennifer, I know she's got some great local examples there.
Sure. Once again, this is just helping the employer understand all that you can do, and how what we do at the community college is often just not off the shelf. It's tailored to exactly what they need. And sometimes it is training, and sometimes they know what the problem is, and we can easily offer a solution, because we have a program, or we can customize a program for them. But I caution you just to realize that training is not the only solution. Sometimes employers don't know what they think they know. So through the interview process, you really have to have a series of questions to get to the root cause of what is happening, so that you can effectively offer a solution. We've had situations where, employers weren't happy with their frontline supervisors. Okay. Well, was that a cohesive supervisor issue? Was it, all the supervisors were not performing, or were there some select few? Well, it was determined that it was just a select few supervisors. So instead of offering a full-blown training program for all the supervisors, which it wouldn't have been a bad idea, but we instead did one-on-one coaching with a couple of the supervisors, that were struggling, because they were moved from, a frontline leader, and now they have a little more supervisory, they're in supervisory role. So it's really important that you walk through a series of questions. You just don't always assume that the employer knows what the problem is. So, and you engage with them to ask the right questions, so how to proceed. And a question just popped up. Did you provide the coaching, or did you work with a consultant? I think that was the question.
That's a question.
Here. So in that particular case, our instructor who taught our supervisory leadership program just did one-on-one consulting. So, or one-on-one coaching with that individual. So we had someone who was willing to do that. Realistically, they were probably discussing a lot of the things that she taught in class, but it was just in a one-on-one format, where that individual then was given some, I'll say, homework, for the lack of a better word, to think about and work on, given some situations and things that they were supposed to do between meetings, and then they would meet again, sort of, talk about what went well, what didn't, then regroup and discuss another issue. So, look to use your instructors, in more ways than just teaching in front of a classroom, perhaps to lead, some coaching sessions or some consulting project. I hope that answers your question.
You said thank you, so I think
you're welcome.
And Jennifer's going to continue to lead us through the value propositions.
Sure. I think what's important is sometimes we get caught up in our language. And you don't know how many times people have asked me what an incumbent worker is. So my point here is that use business language. Don't get caught up in educational jargon just because we work in an educational institution. Talk to their level. And sharing your college's value added is what helps speak to their needs. Okay, don't make them do so much work to understand what we're trying to convey. And Amy, you can move on, or Brittany can advance. Definitely when you're meeting with employers, you have to make known that there will be a return on their investment. And this is hard because sometimes that return is hard to measure, but we need to figure out ways to evaluate all the training that we do to show that companies are gaining a return on their investment, whether that's in productivity gains, reduced turnover, increased skill level in some area, better interactions with coworkers. There has to be some form of metric to really gain employer buy-in. Once again, this is harder to do in some, for some training programs than others. But it will then help you if you are evaluating the work you're doing with clients. It will help you share those success stories and metrics with other clients that you're trying to get to purchase training or consulting from you. Okay. Another, value added we have, and I think this is pretty well known, that it's important to indicate to the employer that, we have many flexible delivery options. We've done things online, we do things face to face, we've offered blended programs. We can really create, training in whatever format they want. And that sometimes, for companies to say, well, we don't have the time to dedicate, or we can't do this, or we can't do this because of scheduling, or they can't come to you. Oh, but we can come to you. But we have 3 shifts. Oh, we can do training 3 shifts. It's not always pretty and easy on the instructor, but we've definitely had, I can think of several, different situations where we've had an instructor at a company at all hours of the night, so that they could cover, all 3 shifts adequately. And lastly, and I mentioned this earlier, make it easy to do work with you, because if there's too many, if there's too much red tape, if they have to fill out too many forms, it just, makes it all the easier to go to your competition. And I know that's hard because within our institutions, sometimes we have to do those things. But I encourage you just to, have the conversations to, so it's easy to work with business. So we're viewed as business friendly.
Well, and being viewed as all the things that we want to be: nimble, accessible, responsive. And if we want to be easy to work with. That next slide is really what Jennifer just said. So don't use WIOA, TANF, don't use bureaucratic jargon. If we can move to the next slide. Speak the language of business. And again, Jennifer kind of touched on a lot of these things as well. So staff specialists, being employer assistant services, talking about trained and ready to work, all of those great things. I'm not going to repeat that because Jennifer just went into that.
The last item there, though, is funding to offset costs. Now I think we're positioned better than ever, due to the strategies at work grant, because for so many years, we really had to, partner maybe with our WIOA group or search for additional grants and resources to help offset funding, for employers. So though I know we never want them to become fully reliant on grant funds, it does allow them to stretch their dollar a little farther and perhaps look to do more with you than they once would. So I feel now more than ever, we're really strategically placed to be more competitive than we've ever been.
Excellent. And we can move to that next slide. So this is step 5, follow up and confirm the agreement. And we have talked about this a little bit as we've talked already today, but just send that summary of your meeting, be easy to work with, identify the needs, how your program is going to address their need, what your agency can offer, summarize those benefits. And I think it does all go back to Jennifer's points of the value proposition. And then moving into step 6, build the relationship. Don't be one and done. So I think, build great programs, use big business language, offer ongoing technical assistance, create a schedule for check-ins, develop those memorandums of understanding, demonstrate your return on investment, productivity gains, reduce in turnover, and attend their employer events. Jennifer, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think it's pretty well covered, but once again, it's that relationship building piece. You really need to get to know the individual you're doing, work with, because you want them to think of you first. And, that's what I can't stress enough, is that in order to establish those relationships, you have to see them, you have to be with them. So, the chamber event that we may not want to go to after work on occasion, perhaps we have to go. Those annual dinners, Rotary, anytime you can develop a way to get in front of employers, you know, to, small talk, to get to know about their family, to know where they're going on vacation. Those are things that make them look back to you.
Excellent.
You can ban.
And then step 7, keep those employers engaged. Jennifer, I think, said this within the first 10 minutes. Don't do the one training and then walk away and think that everything's great. Gentlemen, I'll actually let you.
Sure, yeah, no, you definitely have to recognize and appreciate your employers, and you have to keep them involved. And these are some ways to do that. So, in addition to just serving them in their, training or consulting project, keep them involved, get them to your campus, and you can do that through a variety of ways. Launch an employer advisory panel. We do something here at IVCC. We call it our Chief Manufacturing Executive Group. And that is quarterly meetings with our manufacturing executives. Manufacturing is the biggest sector, is our biggest employment sector here at Illinois Valley. And a way to keep them engaged is to bring them together once a quarter. Sometimes we have 25 people at a meeting, sometimes we have 10. It varies depending on the month and people's availability. But we plug along, and it's a great way to hear from them what's happening in their industry, at their company, what some of their employer, needs may be. And it's a great way for us to tell them what we're doing, perhaps in the way of open enrollment or new initiatives, or even credit training and apprenticeship programs. But venues like that are so valuable because, once again, you're face to face, you establish that rapport, it generates some small talk, and it really keeps everyone on the same page with regards to what is happening, with business and industry. Also, publicly recognize employer partnerships, maybe via quarterly newsletter, perhaps create a partner of the month and feature them, or publish a short success story. The only thing I caution you with this is make sure the employer is on board, because we have found that some employers are private and perhaps might construe that as, oh, we don't want to, let the community know of our vulnerabilities, or perhaps we were experiencing some issues. Others are the exact opposite, and say, yeah, we want to be a leader. We want to show that we value our employees and want to give them the skills to not only, improve upon their skill set, but to make them stronger, which can ultimately benefit the company. But definitely, seek the employer input, but recognize those partnerships. Personalized thank you notes, whether that's, a phone call, an email, or a written, thank you note goes a long way. Other ways you can treat them, more like a partner, and offering them a perk, perhaps offering them access to a program, reducing their cost to a program. We recently launched a new competency-based education program where we gave a handful of our closest partners free seats in that program. Twofold, they expressed that they needed that type of training. We expressed, since it was a new program, that we wanted some input from not only the student in the program, but the employer. So, we set up that scenario for them. And then host an employer coffee chat or networking session. And that, once again, is sort of what I, described with our Chief Manufacturing Executive Group. We've done similar programs for healthcare and other industries, but it's been most well attended, by our manufacturing group. But yeah, the importance is to keep them engaged. The beauty of this is that, as you recognize and appreciate others, you're also doing marketing of your own programs. And, it's sort of like fear of missing out. Well, if this company's doing it, maybe I want to do it. So, this sort of kills two birds with one stone, I guess. You're solidifying that partnership, you're advertising the partnership, you're commending the company for doing what they're doing, but you're also marketing to others, at the same token.
As we wrap up, we've got about 10 minutes left. So key takeaways: listen first, be a solution provider, build a relationship. Look at this not being like a fling. This is a long-term relationship that you're building with this business. Be flexible, be creative, Be willing to do the heavy lifting. Again, help them navigate the systems within the institution. And it's not always about the money. Sometimes one of those small wins can lead to a bigger win later. Jennifer, anything you want to wrap up with closing comments?
No, I think I said it, relationship building.
Yeah.
That is, I really think that's the key. Get to know them, get to know their company. I think, yeah, I always use this example, COVID was hard on us for many, in many ways, right? But I think the biggest aha moment was when we came back to work after being away for so long and tried to, carry on and do business as usual. We found that none of the same people were at the companies we worked with, and we had to start all over again. And that takes time. Some of these things don't happen fast, especially when it, with regards to building relationships. But it can be done, and now we're seeing great results like we were, post-COVID. But you have to be intentional. You have to give it time. You have to maybe do the extra steps that sometimes are hard to do, just, due to time constraints. But I really think it can make the difference with regards to employer engagement.
Perfect. Let's open the floor for questions.
I have a question. When it comes to employee mentor training, you mentioned under ongoing technical training technical training, like what are the logistics of that? Like, are you utilizing non-credit strategies at work grant to pay for people to follow up and provide services afterwards? Like, how is that working?
Is that directed at me? Did I say something?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Whoever.
Okay, well, so we are not using, the majority of our strategies at work money is given to employers, to offset their training cost or open enrollment courses, to offset the training costs of the student. We are using some of the money this time for the first time for marketing initiatives because, we feel it's important and it's just a good timing for us to do that. It's been on our radar for a long time. And now, quite honestly, the grant just makes it more doable. We are using a portion of the funds for the second year in a row to pay a portion of a staff member's salary to do some of the work, to work with those students more so, our open enrollment students, and aligning them to career training programs. I don't know if that answers your question, but I suppose to your question, you could use, some of the NSAW money for staffing.
I'm sorry, I may not have asked that correctly. Inside my head, I don't know, I may not have phrased that right. So what I mean is, like, when you follow up with employers after a training and then offer additional support, like staying connected.
Are we paying the instructor to do that?
Yeah.
We are.
You paying? Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
We are, but you build that into your contract. What we tried to do there is, in certain projects where we see that additional follow-up and support is going to be needed beyond perhaps what we would consider as normal.
Yeah.
We do build that into the contract, and we state
Okay.
that, in the contract as well.
Okay.
This would allow for, the pre-work, the training, and then 2 or 3 follow-up sessions.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? I always like to give it a nice awkward pause there, just so people have time to.
Does anyone have anything to add? Something you're doing perhaps unique that has worked for you in the way of employer engagement? Anyone?
Oh, we had something pop in the chat from Elizabeth. I am still fairly new in my role in Workforce Solutions Division at Harper. I wanted to thank you for the time you've spent with us today. It gives me a lot to chew on. Perfect. Well, welcome, Elizabeth, to your new role. All right. Well, Alex, I know you're on the line. Do you have any closing comments for us on the line? Did I just show my age there by saying that?
No, well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us here today. I mean, there was just a wealth of information that was shared, and thanks for Jennifer for sharing all your expertise and ICSPS for helping with this series as well. We know that employer engagement is really at the lifeblood of what we do here in the non-credit programs, and Jennifer giving the shout out to the install grant for that dedicated line of funding. I mean, from FY24 to the beginning of FY26 now, I mean, we've seen a large number of increase in the number of employer relationships, contracts that have been developed through the install fund. So we're seeing great things, and I'm really happy to have this information to share with all of you. And I think that's everything that I have on my end.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. I know Amy had to hop off, but thank you to Amy as well.
Mhm.
And we have this recording available. I'll get it kind of edited and uploaded later this week, so you can look for that on the website as a resource. Right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.